they dragged Mariel Oathen into the dragon court, with ash on her knees and a sacred theft chained around her neck. No one asked why a stolen royal scale needed a servant's collar before it needed a body record. The accusation hung from an iron collar beneath her throat. A black plaque stamped with one word every servant in Kharrow's spire had been taught to fear. Scale thief. No one in the hall needed the crime explained. Dragon scales were not jewels, not ornaments, not relics for noble cabinets. A true dragon scale carried identity, and an identity scale, once cut away, did not become evidence. It became a wound. To steal a command scale from the sacred scale vault was not simple theft. It was treason against the Dragon King's body, even if the king himself had never seen the missing chess scale. Mariel had spent 4 years cleaning ash from furnace stairs, carrying soot buckets through servant tunnels, and sleeping beneath the cracked laundry arches where the stone sweated in winter. Her hands knew lye burns better than silk. Her shoulders knew coal dust better than cloaks. She had never passed the third bronze gate of the upper palace, much less entered the vault guarded by scale law and dragonbone locks. But a poor girl did not need access when the court needed someone small enough to break. The guards forced her to her knees before the black marble dais. Her palms struck the cold floor. The iron collar jerked until the plaque cut into her collarbone. On both sides of the throne room, noble houses watched beneath dragon banners, their faces still and polished. Not shocked, not curious, only relieved the accusation had landed on a girl with no house strong enough to answer. High-scale Warden Cormac Jas stood beside the evidence table in bronze-black robes clasped with pale scale pins. He had a narrow, patient face, the kind of face that could call hunger discipline and punishment order. In front of him rested a black iron evidence box, rune-locked and lined with dragonbone. A faint black-silver pulse leaked from beneath its lid. "Name," Cormac said. "Mariel Oathen. Station. Lower furnace, ash, servant. Bloodline." Her fingers curled against the stone. "None recorded." A soft murmur moved through the court. None recorded was worse than lowborn. Lowborn still had a place. None recorded meant the palace could write any guilt over your name and make it look official. Cormac turned toward the throne. "Majesty, the accused was found beneath the western vault stair after the 7th bell. Ash on her sleeves. Vault dust in her hair. No witness of rank present." Mariel lifted her head. "I was sent to clean that stair." "By whom?" The question closed around her throat. No person had spoken the order. A sealed work chip had appeared in her ash bucket, stamped with the palace mark. Servants obeyed sealed chips because servants who questioned them vanished into kitchens, punishment mines, or nameless graves. "A work chip was placed in my bucket," she said. Cormac smiled faintly. "And yet the chip cannot be found." The court accepted that too easily. Then the doors behind the throne opened. Heat entered before the king did. Dragon King Bram Kharrow walked into the hall without herald or drum. He did not need either. Candle flames bent toward him, as if old fire remembered its master. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and armored in black silver plates that caught the light like living scales. His dark hair was tied back from a severe face, and his eyes burned with deep gold, not soft, not gentle, but painfully aware. Every noble bowed. Mariel could not. The guards kept her on her knees. Bram took the throne carved from volcanic glass. When he sat, the armor across his chest gave a sound almost too small to hear. A scrape. Not metal against metal. Something living trapped under it. Mariel's breath caught before she could stop herself. The Dragon King's gaze cut down to her. "You heard something." The hall went still. Mariel lowered her eyes. "Your armor sounded hurt." Not loose. Not broken. Hurt." Cormac spoke at once. "Majesty, thieves often reach for strange performances when plain denial fails." Bram did not look at him. "Did you open the sacred scale vault?" "No." "Did you touch the evidence box?" "No." "Did you take what was inside it?" Mariel forced herself to meet his eyes. Fear had already bent her body. She would not let it take her voice. "I cleaned the stair. I was ordered to clean. I stole nothing." Cormac placed one hand over the box. "Then she will not fear the missing command. Scale recognizing its thief." Mariel's mouth went dry. Bram's expression did not soften. "Open it," Cormac whispered the warden's release. The runes brightened. The iron lid clicked once, then stopped. A thin scraping sound came from inside the box. Cormac's face changed for only a breath. But Mariel saw it. So did the king. "Seal the box," Cormac snapped. The evidence box burst open. The missing command scale did not fly toward guilt. It flew toward absence. Black silver light tore through the throne room. The sacred body scale shot upward like a blade with wings, spinning so fast the air screamed. Guards lunged toward Mariel, certain it would strike her. It did not. The royal body scale flashed past her face, cutting one loose strand of hair. Then it turned toward the throne. Bram stepped back once. The command scale struck the breastplate exactly where his armor had sounded hurt. The black silver armor split with the sound of chains breaking inside a beast's mouth. The command scale cut through the royal plate, sank beneath Bram Kharrow's skin, and disappeared beneath his skin as if his body had been waiting around an empty wound. The Dragon King staggered. The plaque around Mariel's neck cracked in half. Above them, every dragon banner lifted without wind. And from beneath the king's skin came the first sound of a wound beginning to testify. The command scale had returned to Bram's chest, but not yet named who carved it out. A blade could name the wound. It could not yet name who led the ash servant to stand beside it. For one suspended breath, no one in the dragon court moved. The nobles stayed bent between reverence and fear, unsure whether to bow lower or run. The guards who had been reaching for Mariel froze with their hands inches from her shoulders. The black plaque at her throat had split in half, but the iron collar still held. One broken piece hung against her skin. The word "scale thief" had cracked through the middle, not erased. That mattered. A broken accusation was not innocence in Kharrow Spire. It was only an accusation with damage on it. And damaged accusations still cut servants first. Bram Kharrow stood before the throne with one hand pressed to his breastplate. The armor had opened over his chest, like a wound forced to remember its own shape. Beneath the split black-silver plates, a narrow line of living fire pulsed under his skin where the command scale had disappeared. It did not heal him. It did not make him stronger. It did not call Mariel chosen, royal, or safe. It only returned to the empty place from which it had been cut. And that return hurt enough to make the Dragon King's jaw lock. Cormac Jast recovered first. "Contain the accused," he ordered. The guards moved toward Mariel again. Bram's head turned. No roar left him. No dragon burst free. He only looked at the guards. And every blade in the room lowered by a finger's width. "Do not touch her yet." "Yet." Mariel heard the word clearly. So did Cormac. The high-scale warden bowed with careful restraint. "Majesty, the return of corrupted evidence does not absolve an ash. Servant. Body reactions can be forced through forbidden contact." Mariel's fingers curled around the broken collar chain. "I never touched it." "You heard what others could not," Cormac said. "That is contact enough for contamination." The line beneath Bram's skin flared. A thin black-silver light spread from the wound across his chest. Not outward to the court, but inward, under skin and bone. It moved like script, trying to find the language of pain. Bram drew a breath through his teeth. And for the first time since entering the hall, he looked less like a king in armor and more like a man discovering the armor had been lying to him. Mariel watched the light with terror pressed behind her ribs. Servants survived by knowing when not to look at royal secrets. But the wound was reading in front of her. She could hear it. Not words at first. Scrapes, cuts. A blade drawn over living scale. A breath held down. A command swallowed before it became flame. Bram saw her listening. "What do you hear?" he asked. Cormac stepped forward. "Majesty, royal body records cannot be tried through an ash." Servants hearing. The phrase landed cleanly. Doctrine, not panic. The court understood doctrine. It gave fear a legal shape. Mariel remained on her knees. The collar bit where the plaque had cracked. She looked at the king's chest. Then at the evidence box split open on the table. Then at Cormac's hand resting too close to the warden blade at his belt. Her voice came low, but it carried. "Read who removed it." The wound under Bram's skin burned white at the edges. Cormac's eyes sharpened. She has no standing to command a royal record. Mariel answered. Then why did the royal body scale come back when I was the one accused of stealing it? No one replied. The body record did. Black silver script opened under Bram's skin, visible through the torn breastplate. It did not spread across the hall. It did not touch Mariel. It did not shield her from the guards. It remained inside the king's wound, reading only the first layer of what had been hidden. Scale Warden Bleth entered. Royal chest opened. Command scale removed. Ash servant placed. The body record had named the blade. It had not yet named the order that placed her at the stair. The words burned across Bram's skin, then sank deeper, as if the body itself hated having to testify in public. Mariel's breath shook. Ash servant placed. Not found. Placed. The word changed the room more than innocence would have. Cormac lifted one hand, palm outward, the gesture of a man calming a court before it understood enough to revolt. Majesty, body record fragments can misname sequence when awakened under shock. The accused heard the armor before the scale returned. Her hearing may have drawn the old wound into theatrical alignment. Bram's gaze stayed on the glowing words beneath his skin. My chest was opened. Under emergency scale preservation, my command scale was removed. For royal stability, and an ash servant was placed. Cormac's mouth tightened. The accused was discovered near a restricted stair. Bram looked at Mariel then. Not kindly. Not softly. Worse, with the first dangerous edge of recognition, he was seeing her not as innocent yet, but as part of a mechanism that had used her body because his own was too dangerous to expose. Mariel hated how badly she wanted that to matter. Bram turned back to Cormac. If my own body held the wound, then my court used a servant to hide what my armor had been covering. The dragon court went silent in a different way. Before, they had feared the scale. Now they feared the sentence. Cormac's hand closed around the hilt of his warden blade. Majesty, I must seal the body record before it damages the obedience bonds in your armor. Bram's eyes flickered black gold. Obedience bonds? The phrase did not belong to armor. It belonged to control. Cormac moved too fast. He drew the blade and slashed it across the air above the evidence box. Bronze runes burst from the table, rushing toward Bram's chest like chains made of law. The body record flared. Bram staggered one step. Mariel rose halfway on her knees without thinking. The collar snapped tight, dragging her back down. The command scale did not protect her. It did not fly out. It stayed beneath Bram's skin, burning around the old wound as the seal tried to close over it. Mariel forced her voice through the iron at her throat. Do not let him cover the last line. The last line was not about the scale anymore. It was about her path. Bram gripped the broken edge of his breastplate. Blood darkened between his fingers. The body record forced one final reading through the sealing runes. The missing command scale had not been stolen from the sacred scale vault. It had been cut from Bram's own chest under scale warden authority, hidden beneath royal armor, and blamed on an ash servant sent to a stair she had never chosen. And a stair she had never chosen meant an order someone had written. The body record had named the blade, but not who placed Mariel beneath the western vault stair. A placed servant could name the route. It could not yet name why the king's armor tried to obey the blade that wounded him. The final line from Bram's wound still burned under the torn armor, thin and black silver, refusing to sink completely beneath his skin. Around the throne room, nobles watched it the way guilty people watched a locked door begin to open. No one looked at Mariel now without also looking at the broken plaque still hanging from her collar. Scale thief had cracked. The collar had not. An accusation could split. A system could keep holding the throat beneath it. That was Kharrow Spire's mercy in its purest form. An accusation could fracture in public, and the servant wearing it would still remain chained until someone powerful decided the fracture was legally useful. Mariel stayed on her knees, palms numb against the black marble. The command scale had not touched her. It had not shielded her from the guards. It had not broken the collar from her throat. It lay beneath Bram Kharrow's skin now, burning inside the wound it had returned to, reading only what the king's body could no longer keep silent. Bram's breath came controlled but uneven. Blood darkened the split edge of his breastplate. He looked like a king trying not to show pain before a court trained to use pain as paperwork. Cormac Jas lifted his warden blade again, not high enough to threaten the king directly, but high enough to let bronze runes gather along its edge. Majesty, the body record has already overreached. The scale has named a blade under shock. It cannot be permitted to wander into palace labor records through an ash servant's fear. Mariel turned her head toward him. Fear did not put the work chip in my bucket. Cormac's eyes narrowed. Good. That had touched the right door. Bram looked down at her. You said a sealed work chip ordered you to the western stair. Yes. And it vanished. It was gone before the guards searched me. Cormac cut in. Because no chip existed. Mariel swallowed. The iron collar rubbed raw skin at her throat. Then let the record say so. A murmur moved through the dragon court. Not belief. Fear of a method they could not control. Cormac stepped forward. Work order records cannot be tried through a none-recorded servant's claim. There it was again. None recorded. Not Mariel. Not woman. Not witness. A blank surface for law to write over. Mariel felt something cold and steady settle beneath her fear. She had been called none recorded her whole life, as if the absence of a noble line made her easier to misplace. But if the palace used none recorded servants because their names could be rewritten, then that absence was not shame. It was evidence of why she had been chosen. She lifted her chin as far as the collar allowed. Read who sent the work chip. The command scale under Bram's skin flared. Bram's jaw tightened. His hand curled against the wound, but he did not command it silent. The body record opened again. This time, the light did not cut deeper into his chest. It traveled outward only as far as the broken plaque at Mariel's throat, then dropped to the marble between them. Black-silver lines appeared across the floor, thin as ash trails, forming the shape of a servant route. Lower furnace corridor, ash bucket station, western service stair, vault shadow. It did not free her. It did not protect her. It only drew the path someone had written for her body. Then the record read, Palace mark entered, ash bucket assigned, vault stair ordered, none recorded servant placed. The body record had named her route. It had not yet named what the armor obeyed. The words lay between Mariel and Bram like a blade. Neither of them had held, but both had been cut by. Mariel's breath shook. None recorded servant placed. Not wandered. Not discovered. Placed. The word changed the room more than innocence would have. Cormac lifted one hand, palm outward, the gesture of a man calming a court before it understood enough to revolt. Majesty. Body record fragments can misname sequence when awakened under shock. The accused heard the armor. She named the work chip. Now the body record reshapes itself around her claim. Bram looked at the route burning on the floor. My palace mark entered. Cormac bowed his head slightly. Palace marks are used across thousands of servant assignments. After the command scale was removed, sequence is unstable. After my chest was opened, Majesty, and it placed her beneath the vault stair. Cormac's fingers tightened on the warden blade. A servant was found where she had no right to stand. Bram's eyes lifted, gold burning through pain. If my palace mark sent her there, then my court wrote her path before it called her thief. The words struck harder than the first record, because this one did not only accuse Cormac's blade, it accused the palace system that answered to Bram's crown. Mariel saw it in the king's face. He wanted the crime to be outside him. A corrupt warden, a forged box, a hidden blade. But the root on the floor carried his palace mark, his court seal, his servant order. His authority turned into a road beneath her feet. Bram was wounded. He was not clean. Cormac moved before the silence could become judgment. He slashed the warden blade across the glowing route. Bronze law runes spilled over the floor, sealing the ash trail lines one by one. Lower furnace corridor vanished. Ash bucket station dimmed. Western service stair broke into sparks. The words none recorded servant place trembled beneath the seal. Mariel lunged forward on her knees. The collar snapped her back so hard she tasted blood. The command scale did not come to her. It stayed where it belonged, beneath Bram's wounded skin. And beneath that skin, the armor still had another master to name. Bram's earlier question returned to the hall like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath. Obedience bonds? The phrase did not belong to protection. It belonged to ownership. Mariel forced her voice through the iron at her throat. Do not let him cover the route. The next line was not about her path anymore. It was about the king's obedience. Bram stepped down from the dais. The court recoiled. But he did not reach Mariel. He did not cut her collar. He did not end the accusation with royal pity. He moved only to the edge of the burning route and placed his bleeding hand over the palace mark before Cormac's seal could swallow it. The body record flared under his palm. The final route line burned through the bronze runes. Mariel had not wandered beneath the western vault stair after the command scale vanished. A sealed palace work chip had been placed in her ash bucket after the scale warden blade opened Bram's chest, sending a non-recorded servant to stand where the missing wound could be blamed. And the same seal that wrote her path had taught the king's armor when to stay silent. The body record had named Mariel's path, but not what Bram's armor had been ordered to obey. The root line still burned beneath the Dragon King's bleeding palm, thin as ash and bright as judgment. It ran from the lower furnace corridor to the western vault stair, ending at the place where Mariel had been found with vault dust in her hair, and no noble witness alive enough to matter. The court stared at the line as if staring long enough might turn it back into servant guilt. It did not. Mariel remained on her knees. The cracked plaque still hung from the iron collar at her throat. Scale Thief had split down the center, but the collar had not opened. One guard still held the chain attached to it, though his grip had loosened. Not from mercy. From fear that the thing around her neck might begin to read next. The command scale stayed beneath Bram Kharrow's skin. It did not fly out. It did not cut her chains. It did not choose her. It burned inside the missing chest wound, and every pulse seemed to hurt him more. Cormac Jas saw the same pain and moved toward it like a man returning to a door he had once locked. Majesty, the root line has reached the limit of admissible record. Anything further will be ash. Servant hearing contamination. Mariel's mouth tasted of blood from where the collar had snapped her back. She looked at Bram's breastplate, at the black silver plates still clinging to his body as if they had not been split open by the scale they were meant to hide. The armor did not sit naturally anymore. It tightened when Cormac spoke, not around Bram's shoulders, around his wound. Bram felt it too. His hand flexed against the broken plate. My armor is reacting to your voice. Cormac bowed. Royal armor answers scale law, Majesty. That is its purpose. Mariel heard the scrape again. Not loose, not broken. Huet. But beneath the hurt was another sound, a command pressed down until it became silence. She lifted her head. Read what the armor obeyed. Cormac's eyes cut to her. Armor bond records cannot be tried through an ash servant's hearing. The phrase entered the room like a lock turning. Armor bond. Record. Hearing. The court knew enough to fear all three together. Bram did not order Mariel silent. He did not free her either. His gaze stayed on the torn plates over his chest, on the way bronze runes crawled along their seams whenever Cormac's blade angled toward him. Mariel understood then. The body record was not only reading what had been done to Bram, it was reading what had trained him not to feel it. The command scale flared beneath his skin. Black silver script opened along the inner edge of the broken breastplate. It did not spread across the hall. It did not touch Mariel. It stayed where the armor met the wound, forcing the thing that had covered him to name its master. The body record read. Obedience bond entered. Royal armor sealed. Dragon command muted. Scale warden seal obeyed. The words struck Bram harder than the returning scale had. He staggered, but did not fall. For a moment, the gold in his eyes dimmed beneath something darker. Something chained and furious under years of ceremony. His hand closed around the edge of the armor. The plates resisted him. His own armor resisted him. Cormac raised his blade. Majesty, those words are an unstable interpretation. Royal armor must obey lawful seal hierarchy during periods of dragon volatility. Dragon command muted, Bram said. For your protection. Mariel's voice came rough. The phrase did not belong to protection. It belonged to ownership. Cormac turned on her. You are a non-recorded ash. Servant accused under scale. Law. You do not interpret royal armor. You called me thief because I heard what your armor had been ordered not to say. The body record pulsed once, accepting the sentence. Bram heard it too. His face did not soften. It hardened into something worse than anger. Recognition arriving too late to be clean. He looked at Cormac. If my armor obeyed your seal before it obeyed my body, then my throne has been wearing chains as ceremony. No one in the court breathed loudly, because the sentence did not only humiliate the scale warden, it humiliated the throne. Bram had ruled from that armor, judged from it, condemned from it, sat above servants like Mariel, while the plates against his chest kept his own dragon command, muted beneath scale warden's seal. He had not forged the first chain, perhaps, but he had worn it as regalia. Cormac moved. This time he did not aim at the route line. He struck toward Bram's chest. Bronze law runes exploded from the warden blade, wrapping the broken armor in hot circles of light. The body record flickered. The command scale beneath Bram's skin burned brighter, but did not break free. The dragon command under the armor pressed against silence and stayed trapped. Mariel lunged forward without thinking. The collar dragged her down. Pain shot through her throat, and the cracked plaque cut her skin. The command scale did not protect her. Bram saw the collar bite. His hand moved toward her chain, then stopped. The record flared a warning under his palm. Forced release collapses armor bond record. Ash servant remains theft source. Scale warden seal preserved. Mariel saw the words and hated them. Even rescue could be turned into erasure if done too early. Bram's hand closed into a fist instead. Cormac's seal pushed harder over the breastplate. An armored king cannot be tried through a servant's ears. Mariel forced herself upright again, trembling. Then let the armor try itself. The body record answered through Bram's wound. The breastplate split another inch. Not enough to free him. Only enough to read the final bond beneath the seal. The royal armor had not merely covered Bram's wound. It had carried obedience bonds keyed to Cormac's scale warden seal, muting the dragon command beneath the breastplate, and teaching the king's own body to stay silent while an ash servant wore the blame. Bronze runes tightened around Bram's breastplate before the court understood the word ownership. The seals did not look like chains at first. They looked like royal craft. Elegant circles of law, fire, scale, script braided through black, silver plates. Ancient dragonbone geometry meant to impress nobles who loved anything cruel as long as it appeared ceremonial. But Mariel saw the truth in the way the armor pulled against Bram's wounded chest. It did not hold him upright. It held him in. Bram stood at the edge of the route line with blood sliding between his fingers, the command scale burning beneath his skin and the breastplate resisting the body it had been made to cover. The record had named obedience bonds. It had named Cormac's seal. It had named the muted dragon command beneath the armor. But it had not yet named what that dragon command had tried to say. Mariel remained on her knees, collar biting into the raw place where the plaque had cracked. She could feel every eye in the dragon court balancing between fear of the wounded king and usefulness of the accused servant. No one had called her innocent. No one had removed the chain. No one had apologized for dragging her before the throne with theft hanging from her neck. A system could admit damage and still keep its hand closed. Cormac Jas lifted his warden blade, the bronze runes sliding obediently toward its edge. Majesty, I advise immediate closure of the armor. Bond record. Your chest has been compromised. Your command responses may be unstable. Bram's eyes did not leave him. My command responses. Dragon command volatility is the first sign of royal body corruption. Mariel heard the scrape under the armor deepen. Not pain now. Resistance. She raised her head. Read what the dragon command tried to say. Cormac turned toward her slowly. Dragon command records cannot be tried through an ash, servant's hearing. The court exhaled into that doctrine with visible relief. A rule. A wall. A reason not to listen. But Bram's wound answered before Cormac could seal it. The command scale flared black-silver beneath his skin, and the torn breastplate pulled tight enough to make Bram's jaw flex. Script opened not over the armor this time, but beneath it, visible through the split as if the king's chest had become a narrow window into a sealed room. The body record read. Dragon command entered. Scale removal refused. Council override filed. Obedience seal tightened. Bram went very still. Mariel understood why. The dragon beneath the armor had not agreed. It had refused. The command scale had not been carved from a willing king under sacred preservation. His own body had tried to command the blade away, and the armor had answered the scale council instead. Cormac did not look afraid. That was what made him dangerous. He looked offended that a hidden procedure had been read in front of people too low-ranked to understand why cruelty had been necessary. "Majesty," he said. Scale removal occurred during a documented period of dragon instability. Council override is lawful when royal command threatens kingdom safety. Bram's voice came low. "My command refused you. Your dragon command refused treatment. My command refused a blade entering my chest. For the stability of Kharrow's spire." Mariel's fingers curled against the marble. "Stability seems to require many people to stop speaking." The line under Bram's skin pulsed once. "Accepted." Cormac's eyes cut to her. "You mistake silence for harm because servants do not understand the burden of command." Mariel looked at the broken plaque against her throat. "No. Servants understand silence better than kings. We are trained to survive inside it." That struck Bram. She saw it, not because he softened. He did not. But because his gaze moved from the collar to the route line, from the route line to the armor, and the pieces arranged themselves in a shape he could not command away. Her silence had been useful. His silence had been engineered. Both had fed the same court. Bram looked back at Cormac. "If my dragon command refused, then the council knew my body had not consented. The council knew the kingdom could not survive an ungoverned dragon throne. And so you governed me." Cormac raised the warden blade higher. "We preserved you." "And, the armor tightened." Bram staggered half a step. Mariel tried to rise, and the guard holding her chain yanked her back before she could reach balance. Pain flashed white behind her eyes. The command scale did not move toward her. It remained in Bram's wound. Reading the record, it had returned to open. Bram saw the chain jerk. The look on his face changed. Not into love. Not into devotion. Something sharper and worse for everyone watching. A king realizing the hand around her collar and the seal around his chest belonged to the same law. "Release her chain," he said. Cormac's blaz flashed. The body record burned a warning across the floor. "Forced release before command record completes. Ash servant contamination preserved. Council override sealed." Bram stopped. Mariel hated that stopping was the right choice. She hated that her throat had to remain useful to truth before it could be free. She swallowed blood and forced her voice steady. "Do not make me clean by erasing the record." Bram's hand closed around the edge of his breastplate until the metal cut into his palm. "Then what does it need?" Mariel looked at the script under his skin. "The command." That was muted. Cormac's composure thinned. "No. Not doctrine. A refusal." The body record heard it. The command scale flared, and the armor screamed softly, metal remembering flesh. The final line forced itself through Bram's wound before Cormac's seal could close. The dragon command beneath Bram's armor had not been madness or royal corruption. It had been his own body refusing the Scale Warden blade, and the Scale Council had filed an override to silence that refusal before placing an ash servant where the missing wound could be blamed. The court did not react when the record said Bram's body had refused the blade. That silence was its own confession. No noble asked why the Dragon King's refusal had been overridden. No council lord demanded who had filed the order. No guard released the chain at Mariel's throat. The Dragon Court only stared at the black-silver script sinking beneath Bram Kharrow's split breastplate, as if the words might become less dangerous if everyone agreed not to breathe near them. Mariel understood that kind of silence. Servants were raised inside it. When a noble struck a kitchen girl, silence became discipline. When a furnace boy vanished after questioning a sealed order, silence became loyalty. When an ash servant was dragged into court wearing scale thief around her throat, silence became law. Now that same silence stood around the Dragon King. Only his was plated in black-silver armor. Bram looked at Cormac Jast, blood darkening his palm where the broken breastplate had cut him. "Who filed the override?" Cormac's expression remained controlled. "Council preservation orders are not personal accusations, Majesty." "Who filed it?" "The Scale Council acts as one hand when the throne is endangered." Mariel lifted her head. The collar scraped her skin open again, but she did not lower her eyes. A hand can still hold a blade. The command scale beneath Bram's skin pulsed once. Accepted. Cormac's mouth tightened. The accused continues to contaminate royal interpretation through servant metaphor. Mariel almost laughed. Metaphor. That was what powerful men called truth when it arrived from a mouth they had already decided should not matter. Bram's gaze shifted to her. Not tender. Not trusting. Still dangerous. Still a king trained to measure every word against politics and survival. But now his suspicion had turned toward the armor he wore. What does the record need? He asked. Mariel looked at the black silver plates sealed over his chest. The armor still clung to him, obedient to Cormac's blade, refusing the body beneath it. It was not only hiding the wound anymore, it was part of it. The override named your silence, she said. It has not named what they made from it. Cormac stepped forward. Armor. Origin records cannot be tried through an ash servant's hearing. The doctrine came too quickly. Mariel felt the court shift. There, another locked door. She pressed her bound hands against the marble and forced herself higher on her knees. Read what the armor is made from. Bram went still. Cormac's brow lifted. Majesty forbid it. Bram did not. The command scale burned under his skin, and the body record opened along the inside of the breastplate. The black silver plates answered slowly, unwillingly, as if the armor itself hated being asked to remember its birth. Script crawled across the broken metal, not on Bram's flesh this time. On the armor, royal scale inventory entered. Chest scale divided. Armor plates forged. King body clothed in removal. The words struck the hall with a force no shout could match. Mariel stared at the breastplate. Divided. Plates. The command scale had not been the only piece taken. Bram's own dragon identity had been cut into armor and placed back over him as ceremony. The court had not merely hidden his wound. It had dressed him in it, polished it, bowed before it, and called the result royal stability. Bram's face lost color beneath the firelight. Cormac spoke fast. Royal scale. Forging is an ancient protective art. A dragon king's excess force must sometimes be shaped into regalia for the safety of the realm. Mariel looked at him. You cut him apart and taught him to wear the pieces. The armor flared. Accepted. Bram inhaled sharply, as if the words had entered where the scale had returned. Cormac's control cracked by a hair. Enough. She has no standing to interpret royal forging. She heard the armor hurt, Bram said. And that hearing has provoked every unstable record in this room. No, Mariel said. Your seal did. The root line on the floor flickered, still trapped beneath half-sealed bronze runes. The broken plaque at her throat hung heavy. She was still accused, still chained, still a servant kneeling below the throne while the king discovered how much of his power had been made from his own loss. Bram looked down at his armor, not with pride now, with disgust. If my armor is made from my own removed scales, he said slowly, then every judgment I gave from this throne came through a wound your council dressed as authority. Cormac's eyes flashed. Your judgments preserved Kharrow's spire. My judgments may have served the men who muted me. Majesty, do not call a chain preservation because it was polished. The court heard that. More importantly, the body record heard it. Black silver script burned under Bram's hand. Polished chain entered. Cormac moved at once. He drove the warden blade down toward the armor origin record. Bronze runes erupted across the breastplate, trying to seal the words inside the plates before they could name what else had been forged. Bram reached for the armor. The record flared a warning. Forced removal collapses, armor origin record. Scale forging authority preserved. Ash servant remains theft source. He stopped, jaw tight enough to break bone. Mariel saw the cost of it. His hand trembled against the plate. Not from weakness, from the need to tear the thing off, and the knowledge that tearing it off would bury the proof inside it. She swallowed against the collar. Do not rip open what still has to speak. Bram's eyes met hers. For one breath, the court between them disappeared into the narrow line of record and wound. He was still the king who had let her kneel accused. She was still the servant his palace mark had placed. Nothing between them was clean, but truth had begun to move in both directions. Cormac slashed the blade across the air. The armor origin record dimmed. Mariel forced her voice through the pain in her throat. Read what the forged plates made him obey. The breastplate screamed softly. The command scale answered from beneath Bram's skin. The final origin line broke through the bronze seal. Bram's royal armor had not been forged to protect him from his dragon. It had been made from scales cut from his own body, divided into obedient plates, and sealed around him so the Scale Council could turn a wounded king into a throne that answered before his dragon command could speak. The armor origin record cracked the court's reverence, but it had not yet named what verdicts those obedient plates had guided. For the first time since Mariel Oathen had been dragged before the throne, no one in the dragon court looked fully certain of the floor beneath them. The black marble still shone. The banners still hung above them. The nobles still wore their polished scale brooches and controlled faces. But the room had changed shape around one fact no ceremony could soften. The Dragon King had been clothed in pieces of his own removal. Bram Kharrow stood with blood on his hand and a command scale burning beneath his wounded chest. His armor had not loosened. If anything, the black silver plates clung tighter, as if being named had made them more desperate to remain beautiful. Bronze seal runes crawled across the seams, trying to turn pain back into regalia. Mariel remained on her knees. The collar still held her. The broken plaque still hung against her throat. Scale Thief had become unreadable from the crack, but the chain attached to it had not forgotten its purpose. The guard behind her had stopped pulling, yet he had not released it. A servant could stand beside a truth powerful enough to wound the throne and still remain the easiest body in the room to restrain. Cormac Jast saw that too. He lifted his warden blade and turned to the court, voice calm enough to make panic sound childish. Majesty, the armor, origin record has already been distorted by shock. The accused remains under scale, theft charge. A body wound does not erase vault violation. Mariel's fingers dug into the marble. There it was again. Move the room back to her. Make her throat hold the crime while Bram's chest held the evidence. Bram's eyes did not leave Cormac. The vault violation was written after my scale was removed. Sequence is disputed. The work chip placed her after my chest was opened. Placement does not erase proximity. Mariel laughed once, low and bitter. Proximity is useful when someone else writes the path. The command scale pulsed under Bram's skin. Accepted. Cormac's gaze sharpened, but his voice stayed smooth. The accused is learning to provoke record fragments through repeated phrasing. Mariel raised her head as far as the iron allowed. Then let the record ignore me. Cormac said nothing. Because it would not. Because every time she named what the court tried to make ordinary, Bram's wound answered. She looked at the black silver plates gripping his chest. Read what verdicts the armor guided. The court recoiled before Cormac spoke. Judgment records cannot be tried through an accused thief's hearing. Accused thief. Not Mariel. Not witness. Not ash servant. Thief again, as if repeating the word could repair its broken plaque. Bram's hand tightened against his breastplate. Let it read. Cormac turned toward him, and for the first time anger showed through the scale warden's calm. Majesty, if you permit royal judgment records to open under servant pressure, every sentence given from this throne will be treated as unstable. Bram answered quietly. That is what I am afraid of. The armor flared. Black silver script opened across the lower plates, where old ceremonial etchings had once looked decorative. The lines rearranged themselves, shedding beauty for function. Names appeared in brief sparks, too many for Mariel to catch. Each one tied to a charge, a verdict, and a sealed flame mark. Then the body record read. Scale theft precedent entered. None recorded culprit selected. Royal sentence guided. Dragon mercy muted. Mariel's breath stopped. None recorded culprit selected. Not only her. The words widened the hall into a grave. Bram stared at the record as if seeing his throne reflected in a blade. Dragon mercy muted. Cormac replied at once. Mercy responses are dangerous when scale. Theft threatens royal identity. Mercy responses, Bram said. Instinctive dragon hesitation. Unreliable during court procedure. Mariel looked up at him. They trained your armor to stop you from hesitating before killing people like me. The record pulsed once. Accepted. A ripple passed through the nobles. Not sympathy. Calculation. If the king's mercy had been muted, Then some of them had benefited from verdicts Bram might have questioned. Some had offered accusations. Some had watched servants disappear. Some had called it justice because the throne had spoken. Bram's face hardened. How many? Cormac's blade lifted. Count records are sealed. Mariel whispered. Sealed means present. The command scale burned brighter. Script opened again. But Cormac struck first. Bronze runes slammed over the judgment record, swallowing the flickering names before they could settle. Bram moved toward the seal. The record flashed a warning beneath his feet. Forced judgment break collapses count record. Accused thief remains source. Mercy mute precedent preserved. He stopped. Mariel hated the warning. She hated that truth kept asking her to stay chained so it could finish speaking. The collar scraped her throat as she leaned forward. Do not break it. Make it count. Cormac turned on her. You have no standing to demand royal count. No, Mariel said. But your armor used people with no standing because no one would count us afterward. The line struck deeper than she expected. Even Bram flinched. The body record accepted it. No standing victims entered. Cormac's control thinned. Majesty, end this now. The accused is turning court grief into rebellion. Bram looked at Mariel. For the first time, the distance between throne and floor felt less like height and more like debt. He had not placed the collar around her throat with his own hands. But he had ruled a court where collars were useful because verdicts had been guided before mercy could speak. If my sentences came through your seals, Bram said, voice low, then my throne has been signing verdicts my dragon was not allowed to question. Mariel met his eyes. You still sat on it. The hall froze. No one had spoken to him like that all night. Bram did not punish her. The command scale pulsed under his skin, and the wound record burned brighter, as if it recognized the difference between blame and absolution. Cormac's blade slashed downward. The bronze seal crushed the lower plates, hiding the names again, but not before one final line tore itself through the armor. The royal armor had guided scale theft judgments before Bram's mercy could rise, selecting none-recorded servants as culprits, muting his dragon's hesitation, and preserving a precedent that allowed Mariel's broken plaque to remain around her throat. The muted mercy record did not clear Mariel's name. It widened the accusation until the whole court could see how many throats it had touched before hers. The broken plaque at her collar felt heavier now. Scale Thief had cracked into two unreadable halves, but the iron still held them against her skin like the court was afraid the word might crawl away if released too soon. Mariel stayed on her knees, breathing through the raw pain at her throat, listening to Bram Kharrow's armor scrape softly around the wound it had been built to cover. The command scale burned beneath his skin. It had returned. It had read. It had not saved anyone. That was what made the room so cruelly honest. Bram stood near the lower step of the dais, one hand against his split breastplate. The judgment record still glowed in broken lines along the armor. None. Recorded culprit selected. Dragon mercy muted. Precedent preserved. His face had gone still in the way. Powerful men became still when they realized silence was no longer obedience but evidence. Cormac Jast adjusted his grip on the warden blade. Majesty, the record has exceeded relevance. The accused stands under present charge. Past judgment fragments cannot interfere with active scale law. Mariel looked at the shattered plaque against her throat. Past judgment is why this collar fits so easily. The body record pulsed once. Accepted. Cormac's eyes hardened. You are not permitted to interpret precedent. No, she said. I was only permitted to wear it. The court shifted. A few nobles looked away. Not because they pitied her, because recognition had begun to make their own positions uncomfortable. Precedent was clean when written in law books. It became ugly when kneeling in front of you, bleeding where the iron touched skin. Bram spoke without looking away from the armor. Open the count. Cormac's answer came instantly. Count records are sealed under Scale Council authority. Then the count exists. It is sealed to prevent political misuse. Mariel lifted her chin. Read who wore the plaque before me. Cormac turned on her. Victim count records cannot be tried through an accused thief's hearing. Accused thief. Again, the word had become his last hook. The command scale beneath Bram's skin flared black-silver. Script crawled from his wound into the lower plates of the armor, where bronze runes tried to hold it back. The record did not open easily. It resisted, or rather the armor resisted for it, clenching around each line as if names were sharper than blades. Then the body record read, "Scale theft count entered. None recorded servants charged. Dragon mercy muted. Ash records erased." Mariel stopped breathing. Ash records erased. That was what happened to people with no recorded bloodline. Their names could be turned into furnace dust, their work chips burned, their collars melted down and stamped again. A servant could vanish from the palace and become proof of nothing except that the palace remained orderly. Bram's voice came low. "How many?" Cormac stepped forward. "Majesty, how many?" Bronze seals slammed across the armor before the answer could form. Mariel heard the names under them. Not clearly. Not fully. Scraped syllables. Broken endings. A girl from the laundry arch. A boy from the furnace hall. An old ash carrier with one bad leg. None recorded. None defended. None missed by anyone who mattered to the court. She pressed her bound hands to the marble. "Read them," she whispered. Cormac's blade flashed. "Names erased under law cannot be restored through servant sympathy." Bram's head turned slowly. "They were erased? Administrative closure. After sentences I gave?" Cormac did not answer quickly enough. The body record did. Royal sentence entered. Mercy response muted. Execution ash delivered. Name closure filed. Bram staggered as if the record had struck him in the ribs. Mariel saw it then. Not innocence. Never innocence. He had sat above those sentences. He had spoken them. Perhaps the armor had muted hesitation. Perhaps the council had guided verdicts. But the voice that condemned them had been his. She looked up at him. "You still wore the mouth that said it." The dragon court froze. Bram did not deny it. The command scale burned brighter beneath his skin, and the armor scraped as if it wanted to drag the words back into silence. "I did," he said. The record accepted it. King's sentence acknowledged. Cormac's composure sharpened into danger. "Majesty, public acceptance of unstable count records will invite challenge to every scale. Law verdict of your reign." Bram looked at him. "Then every verdict that required my mercy to be muted deserves challenge." A murmur broke through the nobles, louder this time. Cormac raised his blade toward Mariel. "Not to strike, to point, to redirect. This is why ash servants must not touch royal records. She has turned a scale, theft trial, into an assault on the throne itself." Mariel laughed softly, though it hurt. "You assaulted the throne before I ever touched the floor." The command scale pulsed. "Accepted." Cormac struck downward. Bronze law fire rushed across the marble toward Mariel's collar. The broken plaque flared black, and the remaining letters of Scale Thief tried to rejoin over her throat. Bram moved instinctively. The record flashed between them. Forced collar break collapses count record. Erased names remain closed. Ash servant remains theft source. He stopped with his hand inches from the chain. Mariel saw the fury in his face. She also saw the cost. If he tore the collar from her now, the court would call it royal guilt, servant influence, emotional instability. The names would vanish again. The system would keep the count buried and leave her free only as an exception, not proof. She swallowed against the iron. "Do not make me the only one spared." The sentence cut through him. Bram lowered his hand. Cormac's seal pressed harder. The plaque burned. Mariel cried out before she could stop herself. But she stayed upright. The body record forced one more line through the armor and collar at once. The broken plaque at Mariel's throat was not the first. Cormac's scale theft precedent had selected none recorded servants across buried trials, muted Bram's mercy before each sentence, and closed their names into ash so the armor could keep obeying while another servant wore the blame. Mariel's cry changed the shape of the trial, not because the court pitied her, because the collar answered it. The two broken halves of the Scale Thief plaque shuddered against her throat, black iron trying to knit itself back around the accusation Cormac had nearly restored. But as the plaque burned, faint names flickered along its cracked surface. Not hers. Not clearly. Scraped syllables appeared and vanished beneath the soot-black metal. Too many to belong to one servant. Bram saw them. So did Cormac. The high scale warden moved before anyone could ask. Remove the accused from the record floor. The guards tightened around Mariel, but none of them dared pull the chain. The body record still burned between her collar and Bram's armor, and the command scale beneath his skin pulsed like a wound refusing sleep. Mariel dragged in a painful breath. The plaque had shown names. That meant the accusation around her throat was not merely a charge. It was storage. A place where erased servants had been sealed until their deaths could become precedent instead of memory. She lifted her head toward Bram's torn breastplate. Read where the names were closed. Cormac's voice struck first. Ash, closure records cannot be tried through a condemned thief's throat. Condemned thief. He no longer bothered with accused. The word told Mariel how badly he needed the ending to arrive before the record did. Bram's eyes stayed on the flickering names in the cracked plaque. Let it read. Cormac turned on him. Majesty, if Ash, closure records open, every execution tied to scale, law may be contested. Bram's voice was low. Then perhaps scale. Law should learn to survive being seen, the body record answered. Black silver script spread from the command scale beneath Bram's skin, crossed the floor in a thin line of fire, and touched the cracked plaque at Mariel's throat. It did not break the collar. It did not loosen the iron. It only forced the accusation to remember what had been buried inside it. The record read, Ash Ledger entered. Name closure filed. Broken plaques reused. Scale theft precedent renewed. A sound moved through the court. Note shock. Inventory turning into indictment. Mariel stared at the final line. Broken plaques reused. Her collar was not new. The iron at her throat had carried other servants before her. Names had been burned out. Accusations had been reforged. One broken plaque became another public proof. One non-recorded body became the next reason not to question the law. Bram's face hardened. How many collars? Cormac's reply came smooth. Condemnation instruments are property of the Scale Council. How many? The number is irrelevant to the present charge. Mariel whispered. No. The number is the charge. The plaque flared. Accepted. The body record forced another layer through the ash-black metal. Plaque recipient selected. None recorded name erased. Ash closure completed. Instrument returned. Mariel felt sick. Not from fear this time. From recognition. The collar had not been made to accuse her alone. It had been made to outlive each throat it ruined. That was why the word had cracked but not fallen away. It knew how to survive damage. It had survived screams, executions, ash, and reforging. Bram looked down at the chain attached to her collar. His hand moved again. The record flared a warning before he touched it. Forced collar break collapses Ash Ledger. Closed names remain sealed. Scale theft precedent preserved. He stopped. Mariel closed her eyes for one breath. Again, freedom stood too close to erasure. Again, her body had to remain trapped long enough for truth to finish becoming useful to the dead. Cormac saw her weakness and stepped into it. Majesty. She is using the collar as a stage. None. Recorded servants leave incomplete impressions on punishment instruments. The record is reading residue, not law. Mariel opened her eyes. Then let it read law. Cormac's jaw tightened. Bram heard the shift. What law? Mariel looked at the broken plaque. Read who authorized the instrument return. Cormac raised the warden blade. Council property records cannot be tried through servant residue. Residue. Mariel repeated softly. A dead servant became residue. A forged plaque became property. A king's muted mercy became procedure. The command scale beneath Bram's skin flared hard enough that he drew a sharp breath. The armor still resisted him, bronze seals crawling over the plates like insects, but the body record cut through one seam and dragged the next line from the plaque. Instrument return authorized. Scale warden seal applied. Royal review bypassed. Next servant selected. Bram's voice changed. Royal review bypassed. Cormac answered too fast. Routine condemnations do not require throne review once precedent is established. Once my mercy was muted. Once scale theft precedent was law. Once your office no longer needed me to choose. The body record pulsed. Accepted. Mariel looked at Bram then, and there was no gratitude in her face. Only the bitter steadiness of someone who had nearly died beneath a system he had ruled from. You did not have to choose each caller, she said. That was the point. Bram did not look away. No, he said. I only let the court keep a law that chose for me. The record accepted that too. King Abdication entered. The words struck him visibly. Cormac's face hardened. Majesty, do not allow a condemned servant to rename delegated authority as abdication. Mariel's voice was hoarse. He did not rename it. The caller did. The broken plaque burned brighter at her throat, and the names beneath it flickered again, more numerous now. Pressing against the iron from inside, Cormac's blade came down. Bronze law fire rushed over the plaque, trying to close the ash ledger before the names could surface fully. Mariel choked as the collar tightened. Bram stepped forward, but the warning flared again. Break the collar now. And the dead stayed ash. So he stopped. Mariel fought for breath and forced the last words out. Read who selected me next. The plaque screamed softly. The body record answered before Cormac's seal could bury it. Mariel had not simply inherited a false accusation. Her cracked scale thief collar was a reused condemnation instrument from buried ash ledgers, returned under Cormac's seal after each erased servant, bypassing royal review, and selecting her as the next non-recorded throat before the court ever opened the evidence box. The names inside Mariel's collar pressed against the iron until even the nobles heard them. Not voices. Not ghosts. Records. The cracked plaque at her throat trembled with all the throats it had held before hers, each erased name striking the metal from within like ash trapped under a sealed door. The Dragon Court recoiled from the sound because it could no longer pretend the collar was a single instrument for a single thief. It was a ledger worn as punishment. Mariel could barely breathe. The iron had tightened under Cormac's seal, biting hard enough that black spots moved at the edges of her sight. Her bound hands clawed at the marble, not at the collar. She knew better now. If she tore at it before the record finished, the dead would remain ash and she would be called the lucky servant the Dragon King chose to spare. She would not be useful as an exception. She would be dangerous as proof. Bram Kharrow stood a few steps from her with blood on his hand, and the command scale burning beneath his split breastplate. His armor still held obedience bonds. His dragon command was no longer fully silent, but it was not free enough to save anyone. It moved under his skin like a restrained fire forced to read before it could roar. Cormac Jast raised his warden blade. Majesty, the collar record has become hostile. By Scale Council authority, I order its immediate destruction. Bram's voice was cold. You cannot destroy a ledger you kept. It is a condemnation instrument. It is evidence. It is council property. Mariel forced air past the iron. Read property. Cormac's eyes snapped to her. Too late. The command scale flared. The body record ran from Bram's wound to the cracked plaque, linking royal chest and servant collar with one black-silver line. It did not shield her. It did not break the iron. It only made the ownership speak. The collar read, Council property entered. Ash ledger retained. Plaque rused. Scale warden authority fed. Cormac's mouth tightened. Property retention is lawful. Bram looked at the names flickering beneath Mariel's collar. You fed your office with condemned throats. The office preserved scale, law. You preserved a path that did not require my review, because your mercy was unstable. Bram's eyes burned black gold. My mercy was muted by your armor. The body record accepted it. Muted mercy entered. Cormac struck. Bronze lawfire surged from his blade toward the collar and the breastplate at once, trying to seal both servant ledger and royal wound under one final command. Mariel choked as the iron pulled tight. Bram staggered as his armor clenched around the returned scale. The court watched. That was the worst of it. After every revealed blade, route, bond, verdict, and reused plaque, they still waited to see which power would be safest to obey. Mariel dug her nails against the stone and forced herself upright on her knees. Read what clears the collar without closing the names. Cormac shouted. No standing. Bram stepped onto the black-silver line between them. Use mine. The court erupted into whispers. Cormac's face hardened. Majesty. Royal standing cannot be lent to an accused, recorded servant. Bram looked down at Mariel. He did not make the mistake of calling it rescue. He did not offer pity before the court. He spoke as a king naming debt. My standing was used to condemn without my mercy. It will be used now to review what my silence allowed. The body record burned brighter. Royal standing entered. Ash contact witness active. Collar review opened. Mariel's throat released by a finger's width. Not enough to free her. Enough to breathe. The collar began to read the names. One by one, they surfaced in black-silver script along the broken plaque and spilled across the marble. Furnace boys, laundry girls, ash carriers, stair sweepers, lamp servants, none recorded workers chosen because no house would demand their return. The Dragon Court had no room left to look away. Bram read every name. He did not flinch from them. Mariel did. Not from weakness. From recognition. The court had tried to make her nameless. But the collar was full of people who had been made nameless first. Cormac lifted his blade again. This review is unlawful. Bram turned to him. Then stand trial under the law your office used. Cormac's expression did not break. The Scale Council will not answer a servant's collar. No, Bram said. It will answer the king's body record. He drove his bleeding palm against the split breastplate. Not to tear it off. To force the armor to read with the wound beneath it. The command scale flared. The obedience bonds screamed in bronze light, then cracked one by one across the black-silver plates. The armor did not fall away completely. Bram did not become whole, but the seal around his dragon command broke enough for the record to name its final holder. Scale Warden seal voided. Royal review restored. Ash ledger opened. Scale theft precedent broken. Cormac's blot dimmed. The collar at Mariel's throat split fully in two and fell to the marble. No dragon burst free. No scale crowned her. No hidden royal mark appeared on her skin. Only air touched her throat where iron had been. For a moment, Mariel did nothing but breathe. Bram lowered himself to one knee before her. Not close enough to claim, not high enough to command. Mariel Oathen, Ash, contact witness of Kharrow Spire. I cannot return what my court took from those names. No, she said, voice raw. I can make the court answer them. You will. The words were not forgiveness. They were a sentence. Bram accepted it. Cormac stood surrounded by guards who no longer knew whether his seal outranked the king's open body record. He did not confess. He only looked at Mariel with cold contempt and said, A servant's hearing will fracture the throne. Mariel touched the bruised skin at her throat. Then it was already cracked. The cracked plaque lay at her knees, empty at last. Behind Bram, the dragon banners lifted without wind again, but this time no one called it salvation. It was only the palace learning that a body record, once reopened, did not close because the powerful were ashamed of what it said. Bram held out his hand and waited. Mariel looked at it for a long breath before taking it. She rose on her own feet.